Most people, they know they should not overtrade, but yet why do a lot of people, including myself, fall victim to overtrading? There's a couple of reasons behind this. I'm going to debunk a couple of them in this video. First off, most people, most traders, most people, just people in general, are all dopamine junkies, right? Now, listen, I would argue that the smartphone was a great invention since the invention of a smartphone. Of course, our lives have gotten so much more easier. One thing I can think about is back in the day, so my dad's a cab driver. Back in the day, he would actually literally pull out a map of the city and then he would like pinpoint areas and like he really understood how the city was designed and how the roads are all connected because again, he's a cab driver, so he spent a lot of time on roads. But with that being said, then the invention of a GPS came out, and then you could like buy a GPS. I think Garmin was one of the brands in which my dad would purchase their GPSs and then use them. And then now you could just pull out your smartphone and then literally just Google Maps, Apple Maps, whatever the case is, right? So of course our lives have gotten so much more easier, but I would argue with the introduction of social media, what has actually ended up happening is that we've all become dopamine junkies, right? Like, how many times have you reached for your phone even though you didn't even have to use it? You didn't need to use it. You just had the sudden urge to reach for your phone. That is because your phone is a source of dopamine, right? 24/7 dopamine. You get to, every single app is, fighting for your attention. And so, with that being said, when we don't place limits or we're not conscious about these things, what ends up happening is we become addicted to dopamine, and that does not translate well when it comes to trading, right? Or just, on the charts in general. Because when you come to the charts, you want to have a structured plan, you want to be as disciplined as possible, and you don't want to be swayed by the highs and lows of the market, right? You want to be as neutral as possible. I like to call it equilibrium. You want to be at equilibrium at all times. Of course, we're going to sway up and down from equilibrium, but main idea is to stay there or as close to that equilibrium as much as possible. Now, with the dopamine, right, let's say you're dopamine addicted, you wake up, first thing you do is hop on your phone, you're scrolling, you're scrolling, you're scrolling. What ends up happening is when you come to the charts, you're going to have the same mentality, and then you're going to end up taking trades. Instead of trading, now you're just chasing the dopamine that trading would give you, right? And so what ends up happening is you end up taking multiple trades just because you want to feel that dopamine, right? So that's like the first reason why a lot of traders will end up over trading. Number two is the fact that you're chasing money way too fast. Now again, I'm gonna use the same example from social media, right? Social media is obviously you're gonna see a lot of traders, including myself. I will see a lot of traders in which they will make so much money, right? They'll make four-figure days, five-figure days, six-figure months, who knows, right? So they'll make 5,000 a day, 10,000 a day, 20,000 a day, $100,000 a day. Some of it's fake, some of it's real, and kudos to those traders that are actually posting real results. It's quite inspiring, actually, right? When I look at that, I get inspired, I get motivated. But at the same time, it also creates, and I've fallen victim to this, so this is why I can even speak about it. It creates this false sense of, oh wow, like this person's doing it, so I need to reach that goal much quicker. And you have to understand, everyone's trading journey, everyone's life is really their own journey in which they have to follow, right? Or really trek down that path. With that being said, if you're constantly comparing yourself to other traders that you see on social media, for instance, now this is going to place a false sense of, oh, I can do that level. I can be at level 50, even though I'm at level 2. I can just jump 48 levels, which is not going to be the case, right? And you're almost always going to get burned. And I have been burned so many times by having that sort of mindset. So what ends up happening when you have that mindset is you come to the charts not actually following your trading plan. What you end up doing is you become greedy. So an example I'll use is myself. I like to risk $300 a day, and I like to make about $300 to maybe $500 a day. So it's about a 1-to-1 R, or maybe like a 1 to 1.25, 1.5 R, in that range. I like to trade and try to aim for that, right? And I do pretty well with the 1-to-1s because my win rate will be roughly about 60 to 70%, I would say. But what has happened recently is I was following that plan for a while, got a couple of payouts. I got like 5K in payouts last month. But what I ended up doing is I ended up blowing all that back into evals and just blowing funded accounts simply because I started to chase home runs. I started to chase trades or like P&L that would be higher than $500. And what ended up happening was my win rate started to take a hit. And then my psychology ended up taking a hit. And I ended up over trading and just ultimately blowing those accounts. So I say all this to say, you know, I was making a good amount of money from payouts while just following my system and going for that one-to-one and not being greedy. But what ends up happening is when you consistently, bombard yourself with other traders doing so much better than you, or this is what, again, these are just things that you might think as you see other traders doing well for themselves. You're gonna naturally compare yourself to those traders and think, oh wow, I should be like them. I should be in this spot, but I'm not there right now. I suck, whatever, all this negative self-talk. It makes you greedy on the charts and it makes you deviate from your plan, right? So this really is the second reason why people overtrade, is because they have these unrealistic expectations of what trading is and what trading will do, and they chase these home runs, right? You want to go for base hits, not home runs, because again, the home runs are flashy, yes, but base hits, will ultimately lead to a home run as well, but it's just smoother. You can get a single here and there, maybe a double, but the home runs, they only come every so often, right? And so personally for myself, my psychology does much better when I go for the base hits. That's number two. And number three is you're emotionally reacting to the wins and losses, right? And again, I've fallen victim to all of these reasons, and that's why I can even speak about them. And you emotionally reacting, I like to say, like, you never want to get too high off the highs and you never want to get too low off the lows. You want to be at equilibrium as much as possible, as close to equilibrium as you can be. And so if you are reacting, you're not being stoic when you come to the charts, you're not focusing on being at equilibrium, you're not focusing on your breathing. Maybe you went to sleep late. This can cause like, you to be disrupted from your flow state. With all that being said, so really, you don't want to be swayed by the markets as much as possible. And the best way you can do that is if you actually just set solid rules. Listen, everyone's trading plan is going to be different, but I would argue that there are two things that you need to keep pretty strict, right? And that would be your trade frequency. So how many trades are you going to take in a day? I would aim for anywhere from 1 to 3. Anything more than that, listen, there are some traders that get away with more than 3 trades a day, but again, their strategy is a little different. I would just say 1 to 3 just to keep it simple. And then how much you are willing to risk per day, right? This is a very big one as well, because overtrading, once you start overtrading and you don't have like a risk limit, brother, you could blow your account in one day. And I'm sure some of you watching this video have done that. I have done that plenty of times. I've blown a single account, funded or not, whatever it may be, in one day, simply by not being strict on the risk that I have for the day, and then also how many trades am I going to take for the day. Keep those things strict and you will be fine, I would say. And now the last reason here is, again, it's just back to what I was saying. You don't have hard rules. You need to have these hard rules in place with not just trading, but when it comes to life in general as well. Because listen, if I tie all these reasons, right? If you don't want to be a dopamine junkie, you don't want to get too emotional, you want to keep strict rule set, all these things, these all go hand in hand with actually just living the best version of your own life, right? So I'm pretty big into fitness, right? And so this translates well into trading, because with fitness, for you to even reach that 10% physique or 1% physique, you need to be dialed in. You need to be moving a whole lot different from, let's say, your peers or just people in general, right? Because it's called the top 10% for a reason. If it was the top 90%, obviously you'd see a lot more people with a lean aesthetic physique, for example, or successful from trading, because again, you have to be in the top 10% to achieve what most people dream of achieving, right? And the only way that you're going to get to this place, right, or achieve your goals, whatever the case may be, is by actually locking in and moving different from everyone else, which means you got to stay disciplined. You got to be going to the gym. Trading cannot be your entire life. I'm sorry to tell you guys, like, if trading is your entire life, that is probably a big reason why you are over trading. And the best way to fix this is to focus on other things. This is why some successful traders will run multiple different businesses. Maybe, they might be related to trading, they might not be. But this keeps them occupied in other areas of life in which they can improve upon themselves, right? Fitness is a big one, man. If you're not going to the gym, like this generally, I think, is I want to say it's like the first thing, or like the foundation in which you can build upon, right? So if you're out of shape, or yeah, if you're just out of shape, building a lean aesthetic physique, that's what I would like to go for, and that's what I have myself right now, a lean aesthetic physique. Going for that will allow you to become much more disciplined in your day-to-day life, and it's going to translate onto the charts as well, because guess what, you're going to have to delay gratification in order to get a lean aesthetic physique. And that is the same thing when it comes to trading. You have to delay gratification. While everyone else is yinging, you got to be yanging. I don't know if that sounded great on camera, but listen, that's really the reality of it, man. Everyone else is doing one thing, you got to be doing the other thing. You got to go against the grain. That's the only way that you're going to get some remarkable results, right? In any sort of industry that you're in, not just trading. But yeah, that's basically why, a couple of reasons why people overtrade. Let me know in the comments below if any of these resonate with you guys, or let me know if I missed any. But as always, guys, thank you guys for watching, and stay frosty, my friends.